Hello all, this is Skinny and welcome to my safe space. It's the only place where I feel safe. If you're new and enjoy my content, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe and enjoy my review of The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is set place in a dystopian North America. The continent has been renamed Panem by the ruling class within the capital. Those beneath them were segregated into 13 districts 74 years earlier. The districts rebelled, resulting in the destruction of 13. As penance for the war, each district must give the capital a boy and a girl aged 12 to 16 years of age to compete in a battle royale known as the Hunger Games. Our protagonist within the trilogy is Katniss Everdeen, hailing from 12. This trilogy recounts her times before, during, and after the games, along with the Second War against the capital. I will try to keep spoilers out of this review in case you have not read it yet, and enjoy my review. Before beginning my review, for anyone new to the channel, my criteria for discussion will be character development, pacing, world building, and set rules and consequences, totaling to 20 stars. At the end of my review, I will condense it down to 5 stars for easier translation. Starting with character development. My initial thought of Katniss was that of a single parent attempting to get by providing for her sister. Born in one of the poorest districts, the coal miners' district of number 12, Katniss was taught to hunt with a bow at such a young age by her father before a mining accident took his life. Forced to step up as a prime caregiver for her sister when her mother became bedridden with grief. Set up as an honest, selfless and compassionate from the beginning, with her shockingly volunteering to replace her sister in the 74th Hunger Games. Her compassion for another tribute in her games gives the 11th district the motivation to rebel against the capital. Her honesty in pushing back against the capital fuels the rebel spirit. Her selflessness nearly made her a martyr to their cause countless times throughout the trilogy. Another character we're introduced to is Gale Hawthorne, Katniss's best friend. Losing his father in the same mining accident, Gale and Katniss met when they were illegally hunting in the woods. With a mother and 3 other siblings to look after, Gale became more hardened, losing a lot of compassion for others and openly becoming angry and critical of the capital. Gale is eager to help the rebellion, making traps and bombs on their behalf, losing everything he built with Katniss before he realized it. The final character I will discuss is Peter Malark, the youngest son of a baker. Peter was picked as the tribute for District 12, paired with Katniss. Abused by his mother, Peter was shy about expressing himself. He thrived at working the capital's feelings into offering sympathy and love, garnering far more support for the pair than expected, with his words causing far more damage to the capital's reputation than violence ever could. Peter was a unique presence within the trilogy, and by far my favourite character within it. Before finishing up, I would like to talk about the antagonists, President Snow and Coin. The former hidden in the shadows for most of the time, his actions and presence emitted dread and fear when he was reintroduced, using cruel and heavy-handed tactics to stifle any action deemed rebellious against the capital and its agenda. Snow's downfall was his ego when attempting to control Katniss, garnering further sympathy to the rebels' cause. Introduced in Mockingjay, Coin, on the other hand, needed Katniss to build her power base with zero empathy for who she had to execute to make it to the top. For character development, I give 5 stars, as they remain consistent from their core characteristics throughout. My next category is pacing. With Katniss being the only perspective, it becomes a little dull with Peter for a stretch of the 3rd book. His personality would pop on the page, offering far more information compared to Katniss's reserved personality. I'm going with 4 stars, as the 3rd book, Mockingjay, becomes a little slow with the reintroduction of the stiff and robotic District 13. Starting off with the amount of districts, apart from the coal miners' district of 12, information provided by Rue and the riots within the agricultural district of 11, most districts don't receive much more than some dialogue explaining their purpose. With the massive task of exploring the remaining 10 districts within a trilogy, I would have offered some commentary as to why each chose to rebel, given the near impossible task of rebellion against the capital. Something like the transportation district of 6 being attacked unprovoked by the capital due to their potential value to the rebels, the destruction of the ports that smuggle the addictive drug morphine in, causing the largest populace into withdrawals, forcing fealty or neutrality. Districts 1 and 2 were most loyal to the capital, an issue with unfair treatment, or District 2's rapidly diminishing peacekeeping force making the capital conscript the labourers, forcing their own uprisings. Starting the trilogy, Katniss doesn't know how bad the other districts had it until her conversations with Rue when they were in the game arena, implying the districts have little to no contact with one another, giving each of the districts a reason to despise and rebel against the capital, either in an outright attack, as I suggested above with District 6, or in a domino effect as the war continued on. It would have had so much more importance to the conception of another rebellion and how important it would be for the districts to form an alliance. Getting my criticisms out of the way, I enjoyed the distinctions between the capital and the district's tributes. When Katniss was brought to the capital, she was so put off by the residents dressed in colourfully loud clothing and wigs. It created an interesting subculture within the story that reflects many of our own social media trends. Returning to the districts, characters such as Thresh and Rue from District 11 use their knowledge of agriculture to hide out and live off the land during the games, being able to outthink the career tributes who had trained specifically for an advantage. These subtle elements of character writing makes the story progression exciting and unpredictable. In the latter sequel, it's explained how earlier victors such as Finnick Odair from District 4 and Beatty Latier from 3 won their respective games, using skills acquired from working back home, keeping continuity intact, and built them up as equals, if not more superior to Katniss. The last topic I'd like to give props for is the build-up towards the first games. From the moment Katniss is forced on the metal table for cleaning and preparation for her stylists, to the interviews with the host Caesar Flickerman on Capitol TV. The tributes are expected to sell themselves to the Capitol's citizens for sponsorships, offering them advantages during the games. This contributes to the build towards the games themselves, creating anticipation for the adrenaline-filled fighting. Even with the heaps of praise I've offered, I couldn't give it a full 5 stars. 4.5 stars seems fair enough for world building. Moving on to set rules and consequences. To define my last category, it is the use of realism and an offered set of rules preventing plot armor for main, secondary, and tertiary characters. Existing systems must be put in place to allow realism and unpredictability. After the 74th games, Katniss suffered nightmares and panic attacks, mostly as a result of directly killing 2 of her fellow tributes. Peter found therapy in painting, becoming further reserved around Katniss due to being initially rejected. Being introduced to the pair's mentor, Hamish, in the first book. Hamish is not only a victim of the 50th games, but a vengeful President Snow, who made an example out of him for using the arena's force field to his advantage. Suffering from nightmares like many, he opted to drink alcohol to cope with the varying degrees of success, embarrassing his district for 25 years. In the sequel, Catching Fire, returning victors are forced to be tributes in the third prequel, introducing us to characters like the Morphling addicts from District 6, Wyrus from 3, and Joanna Mason from the Lumber District of 7. These characters clearly exhibit varying signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, adding further context to how damaging these games are. Another relationship between characters I'd like to praise is that of Katniss and President Snow. For the amount of time he's on page, most of his interactions are with Katniss, with a simple promise to not lie to one another. Katniss managed to expose Snow's ego for control in every situation, from him placing the crown upon her head, turning up unannounced in her home in the victor's village, and finally in the gardens after his capture. Katniss, with a hand of berries, managed to damage the capital's fragile reputation, in turn damaging Snow's. Even with the threats against her family, Katniss's role in the games inspired many of the repressed districts to push back at a broken system. Snow's continued threats to her only exasperated the issues further, angering the districts who've watched many victor return a shell of their former selves. With as little time as he spent on page, Snow was far more detestable for his actions than his presence. I award this category, Rules and Consequences, a 5 out of 5 stars. With a great world, politics, and characters, my only problem is that of the building of the rebellion in the third book. I offer this trilogy 18.5 stars out of 20, or 4.5 in a general rating, a strong recommendation. The Hunger Games explores topics such as poverty, segregation, politics, and the pageantry of reality television to learn from as an aspiring author myself. Thank you for watching, and to quote the games, may the odds be ever in your favor.